Fractures of the Heart. Chapter 1. Elena. Rain clung to Elena's coat like a second skin as she sat with Luca and Mira, trying to ignore the way her heart crawled upward. Tight, insistent animal. The cafe was overcrowded tonight, bodies packed too closely, their voices weaving into a low, ceaseless murmur. Steam pressed against the windows until the world outside blurred into streaks of color. Everything looked melted, unstable. It matched the feeling inside her chest. A server passed with a clatter of cups, but even that noise couldn't drown out the sound of Luca's heartbeat in her memory. She knew it too well. Knew the stutter it caught when he was nervous, the lingering fade when he whispered her name against her collarbone. But tonight something was off. It wasn't only that he sat angled toward Mira. It was the way his entire body held itself. Shoulders tightened inward, breath clipped, eyes flickering at the wrong moments. He was guarding something. "Elena," Mira said softly, as though the intimacy of her voice could smooth the tension in the air. "We were worried about you. You haven't answered any of our messages since last night." Elena forced herself to meet Mira's gaze. Mira's eyes always had a warmth to them, a brightness that made people open like flowers toward the sun. But tonight, Elena saw something else buried beneath the glow. Something tense, hesitant, almost guilty. "I needed time," Elena said. Luca's jaw ticked at that just once. He knew what time meant. He knew it was her way of keeping from drowning. Mira traced her finger along the rim of her cup. "Are you working too much again? That new series. I know it's asking a lot from you." Elena swallowed a bitter laugh. If only the art were the weight crushing her. "I'm managing." "That's not managing," Luca said quietly. His voice was steady, but it carried an edge that slid between Elena's ribs. "It's hiding." Mira shot him a warning look, but Luca didn't back down. Elena turned her gaze to Luca slowly. "And what do you think I'm hiding from?" He blinked, but he didn't look away. "From us." There it was. A fracture drawn like a line across the table. "Luca," Mira whispered. "Not here." "No," he said, eyes still locked on Elena. "If we pretend nothing's wrong, it's only going to get worse." Elena felt her breath thin. "That's rich," she said. "Coming from you." Mira stiffened. Luca recoiled slightly, as though the words had claws. "Elena," Mira murmured. "Please don't turn this into..." "Into what?" Elena snapped, though her voice never rose above a hush. "Into the truth?" The cafe around them continued its gentle storm of noise, but at their small corner table, silence dragged its fingers across every surface. Mira finally spoke, fragile and earnest. "We're all tired," she said. "Let's not do this tonight." But Elena couldn't stop studying her. The way Mira's hand hovered just a little too close to Luca's. The way her smile trembled at the edges. The way Luca's body leaned ever so slightly toward her. Not intentionally, but instinctively. Elena had always been good at noticing instinct. A server dropped off a new pot of coffee. Mira reached for the handle, but Luca steadied it at the same moment, their fingers brushing. A tiny innocent contact. Yet Elena felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "Did you two meet here?" Elena asked, voice quiet, dangerous. Mira blinked. "Tonight? We just happened to." "No," Elena said sharply. "Not tonight. In general." Mira looked confused. Luca went still. Elena felt her throat grow tight. "You've been spending a lot of time together." The words dropped like stones. Luca inhaled sharply. "Elena, it's not what you're thinking." "And what am I thinking?" she asked. "That we're hiding something from you." "Are you?" Mira shook her head immediately. Too quickly. "No." "God, Elena, no." But Luca said nothing. His silence hollowed out the space between them. Elena leaned back in her chair, cold settling into her bones. "I see." Mira reached out, hand trembling. "Elena, please look at me. Nothing happened. We just talk. Sometimes. I didn't think it mattered." "It matters," Elena said. Her voice didn't sound like her own. Mira flinched as if struck. Luca finally spoke, voice low and rough. "We were just trying not to overwhelm you." "What does that mean?" He rubbed his forehead. "Elena, you've been pulling away. We didn't know how to reach you. So you tried reaching each other instead." Mira covered her mouth, tears gathering. "No. That's not Elena, please, you're twisting this. Elena stared at them both, feeling something inside her loosen. Not relief, not acceptance, but a thread snapping. I need air, she said. She stood. The chair legs scraped a harsh, ugly sound. Elena, wait, Luca said, rising too. She shook her head. Not here. For a moment, all three of them stood suspended in a fragile tension, like glass touched by a hammer. Then Elena turned and walked out into the storm. Rain hit her immediately, cold, relentless, washing the warmth of the cafe off her skin. She walked without direction, without thought, just away. Away from the table. From the tension. From the impossible truth that something had shifted, something irreversible. Behind her, the cafe lights flickered again. Inside, Luca and Mira remained, two silhouettes framed by fogged glass. Still close, still warm, still orbiting each other in a way that made Elena's chest ache. As she disappeared into the rain-soaked street, Elena understood the bitter truth. This was no longer a story about three people trying to hold on to each other. It was a story about what happens when the center cannot hold, and everyone begins to fall inward. At once. Chapter 1. Elena continued. The storm swallowed her almost immediately. Rain battered her face in sharp, cold bursts, soaking her hair, her clothes, her breathing. The street was mostly empty. The few people who hurried past were faceless blurs behind umbrellas, silhouettes moving quickly from one warm haven to the next. Elena felt like a ghost among them. Untethered, unnoticed, weightless in the worst way. She walked without knowing where her feet carried her. The city's lights reflected in puddles that rippled across the pavement, distorting everything into a smeared painting of color and motion. Her reflection flickered with each step, broken by the water. She barely recognized herself. The storm pressed harder. It wasn't cleansing. It was punishment. Elena found herself cutting down a narrow alley where the buildings rose close together, their brick walls wet and breathing. A metal fire escape rattled overhead as wind tore through it. She stopped beneath it, pressing her back against the cold wall, chest rising too quickly. The air tasted metallic. Her throat burned. Hiding, Luca had said. As if she didn't know. As if she hadn't spent months drowning quietly behind her own ribs. Elena shut her eyes, letting her head rest back against the wall. Drops from the fire escape above hit her cheeks like tiny slaps. She didn't wipe them away. She let everything soak. Let it all press in. There in the dim alley, the truth unraveled with ruthless clarity. She had felt them slipping away long before tonight. Mira. Her warmth, her easy laughter, her ability to brighten any room simply by stepping into it. Elena had always been drawn to that light, even when it stung. She loved Mira, or something dangerously close to it, but had never said it, not even to herself. Luca. The familiarity, the shared years, the history woven between them like tight threads. He had been home once. A place where she could set her heart down and trust it wouldn't be dropped. Now home's door was slightly ajar. And someone else was inside. Elena pressed the heel of her hand to her forehead, then dragged it down over her face. Her fingers trembled. What hurt most wasn't that she saw something happening between them. It was that they had let something begin. A flash of lightning lit the alley for an instant, bright, violent. It carved their faces into her mind. Luca leaning toward Mira, unconscious, instinctive. Mira smiling up at him, fingers brushing his by accident or by choice. Something inside Elena twisted sharply. She pushed off the wall and kept walking, water dripping from her hair onto her lashes. The storm had reached its peak now. Thunder rolled like distant artillery. Wind shoved at her shoulders as though urging her toward somewhere she didn't want to reach. She cut through the streets until she found herself at the old pedestrian bridge that crossed the narrow river at the edge of the arts district. It was deserted at this hour, the wooden planks slick beneath her boots, the lamps along the railing flickering as if struggling to stay alive. Elena moved to the center of the bridge and gripped the railing with both hands. The river churned below, dark and merciless, reflecting no light. Just movement. Just depth. Her breath shook. Not from fear. From exhaustion. From carrying a story on her back that she hadn't realized was collapsing. She leaned forward slightly, staring down into the shifting water. The storm's energy pulsed through the river like a heartbeat. The whole world felt louder than she could bear. "Stop," she whispered. Her voice was barely sound. Just stop. But thoughts did not stop. Images did not stop. Luca's silence. Mira's trembling smile. The empty chair that had almost belonged to her, and almost didn't. Elena closed her eyes. She didn't cry. Tears would have been too simple. Instead, she felt something settle inside her with cold precision, a decision or maybe a warning, or maybe just the first step toward breaking cleanly instead of shattering slowly. When she finally opened her eyes, the rain had begun to ease. Not stop, never stop, but ease, just enough to let her see the blurred city lights on the horizon. She inhaled sharply. She wasn't going back. Not yet. They could have their warm cafe and their careful smiles. They could sit in the glow together, pretending there were no shadows looming between them. She would walk alone tonight. Because some truths are easier to face in the dark. Chapter 1. Elena extended. When Elena finally turned away from the river, the storm had thinned into a cold drizzle, the kind that seeped into the bones rather than the skin. Her clothes clung to her body, heavy and dragging at her steps as she crossed the bridge and headed toward her apartment. She didn't walk quickly. There was no urgency left in her. Just the steady rhythm of her boots on wet pavement and the hollow echo of her own pulse in her ears. By the time she reached her building, the night had grown quiet, an unnatural quiet, thick and watchful. The stairwell smelled faintly of mildew and old paint. Her footsteps echoed up the stairwell like they belonged to someone else. She unlocked her door and stepped inside. Her apartment greeted her with darkness. Not comforting darkness, sharp, cold, intrusive. She didn't bother turning on the lights for a moment. She just stood there in the threshold, soaked and unmoving, as if the night had followed her in and taken root in her chest. Finally, she shut the door and flicked on the light. The small space welcomed her the way it always did, with quiet neutrality. The walls were dotted with pinned photographs, her own and others, test prints and drafts and discarded fragments. Her camera sat on the table, lenses glinting faintly like watchful eyes. She peeled off her coat and dropped it to the floor, then her shoes. The silence chewed at her ears. She needed noise, something to drown her thoughts. But when she reached for her speaker, she stopped. Music would just be another layer to hide behind. And tonight she was done hiding. She walked into the kitchen and filled a glass with water. But she didn't drink it. She stared at her reflection caught in the window's dark surface, blurred, distorted, split by streaks of rain outside. She looked like someone unraveling slowly, thread by thread. "Elena," Luca had said, "you're hiding." Maybe she was. But so were they. She set the glass down carefully, almost ceremonially. Her fingers left faint smears of water on the counter. She needed to do something with the energy thrumming under her skin. Something to keep her from thinking. Something to anchor the world back into place. Her gaze drifted to the camera on the table. The idea came not as a thought, but as a pulse, stubborn and sudden. Rising from somewhere deep she rarely let herself touch. Elena walked to the table and picked up her favorite camera. It felt cold, solid, real. Something she could hold without it slipping away. She walked to the wall of pinned photographs, portraits, experiments, studies of light and movement. And right at the center, dominating the whole cluster, was Mira. A shot from 2 months ago. Unposed. Mira laughing at something Elena had said. A genuine, unguarded moment full of sunshine. Tonight it looked different. Fragile. Vulnerable. Exposed. Elena reached up and traced a finger along the edge of the photo. Then she took it down. She held it between 2 fingers for a long moment, staring at the captured curve of Mira's smile. Her chest tightened, not with longing but with something darker. Something sharper. She carried the photo to her desk, turned on a small lamp, and set Mira's image under its light. The warmth of the lamp hit the paper and made Mira's face glow faintly, as though she were standing just beyond reach. Elena lifted her camera, not out of habit, out of need. She took a single picture of the photo. Its edges, its grain, the light bending across Mira's features. The shutter clicked loudly in the silence. It was the sound of something tilting inside her. She took another, and another, and another. Each click was a heartbeat she could control. The storm outside had nearly passed, but Elena didn't notice anymore. She was sinking deeper into the quiet frenzy of fixation. Focus and fear tangled together. After several shots, she lowered the camera and breathed out slowly, shakily. She should have felt calmer. She didn't. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She froze. One vibration. Then another. Then another. 3 messages. She didn't have to pick it up to know who they were from. She walked over anyway, slowly, like approaching a sleeping animal. The screen lit up. Luca. Elena. Please tell me you got home safe. Mira, we're worried. Just let us know you're okay. Luca. We shouldn't have let you leave like that. Elena stared at the messages until the screen dimmed. She didn't respond. Not out of spite. Out of fear that anything she said would be the wrong thing, the thing that broke everything beyond repair. She set the phone down face down and returned to her desk. She lifted the photograph of Mira again. Her thumb brushed the corner of the photo softly, almost tenderly, then firmly, then harder. The paper bent. Not torn. Not ruined. Just bent, changed. Elena exhaled. And for the first time that night, she felt something resembling clarity. She wasn't ready to let Mira go. She wasn't ready to confront Luca. She wasn't ready for any of it. But she was ready for this. To stop pretending she didn't feel the crack forming inside her. And start paying attention to the direction it was spreading. Chapter 1. Elena. Night extended further. Elena sat at her desk staring at the bent photograph long after the storm outside quieted into nothing more than a soft, indifferent drizzle. The city had turned muffled, every sound dulled by wet streets and the hour. Yet her mind only grew louder, its edges fraying with thoughts she couldn't slow or tame. She set the photograph down gently, almost reverently, then reached for her darkroom light switch. The small room glowed crimson. The chemical smell drifted out softly, familiar and acidic, seeping into the air around her. It anchored her the way nothing else could. Here, in that red half-light, she could pretend the world outside didn't exist. Or wasn't unraveling. She closed the door behind her. Her hands trembled as she loaded the fresh film. Those images of Mira's smiling face captured through another photograph, into the tank. The repetitive motion soothed her. The darkroom routine whispering a strange comfort. You control this. You control what develops. What emerges? What remains? The reality outside the room felt unmanageable. But here she could choose what to expose. When the first image emerged in the tray, Mira's face rose slowly from nothing, grain by grain, line by line, like someone surfacing from a deep black lake. The paper swirled in the solution, Mira's smile appearing ghostly at first, then sharper, then real. Too real. Elena's breath hitched. She reached into the tray and lifted the dripping print, letting it hang as chemicals slid down her wrist. The photograph of a photograph. A copy. But the emotion in it looked more honest than the original. Mira's smile had become something else through Elena's lens. Something wistful, almost aching. Or maybe that was Elena projecting. She couldn't tell anymore where her vision ended and reality began. She set the print on the drying rack and leaned her weight against the counter, her arms shaking. She lied to herself earlier. She wasn't afraid of losing Luca. She was terrified of losing Mira. The thought landed with such clarity that for a moment Elena forgot to breathe. It felt like a confession dragged from the deepest place in her, a place she had starved for years, without admitting she'd been hungry. She pressed both hands against the counter, bracing. Her throat tightened painfully. She loved Mira. Not with the same dull, dependable warmth she had once felt for Luca. Not with the safety of history. With something sharper, more frightening, more consuming. A love that could undo her. She shut her eyes, pressing her palm to her mouth to quiet the sound of her own ragged breathing. The red light painted her skin strange shades of blood and shadow. The phone buzzed again outside the darkroom. Once. Twice. Pause. Then a third time. 3 messages. Again. Elena didn't check them this time. She couldn't. Her heart wouldn't survive it. She pulled the darkroom door open, stepping back into the dim apartment. The air felt heavier here. Less ritual, more reality. Her phone sat where she had left it, face down, dark and silent now. Elena walked past it. She moved to the window instead. Lifted the blinds. The city lights blurred through the leftover rain streaks, trembling like reflections in broken glass. Somewhere out there, Luca and Mira were probably talking about her. Or talking about each other. She couldn't tell which was worse. A surge of something, fear or fury or longing, rose violent and unfiltered in her chest. Before she knew it, She had lifted the window and leaned out into the cold night air. The wind clutched her wet hair, pulling it away from her face, whispering chill into her bones. For a heartbeat, Elena imagined jumping. Not to die. Never that. But to jolt herself awake. To shock herself out of this spiral. To feel something definite instead of everything fragmented. She let the thought hover, dark, seductive, before pulling herself back inside. She shut the window, locked it, stepped away. Her phone buzzed once more. A single vibration. Elena froze. Then she turned slowly. The screen lit up in the darkness. Mira, please. Just one word so I know you're okay. I can't sleep. Not we. Elena stared at the message until her vision blurred around the edges. Something deep inside her chest broke open. Not shattered. Opened. She walked to the table and sat down, picking up the photograph of Mira again, the original one, not the copy. Her thumb lingered over Mira's captured smile, softer this time. Familiar. Dangerous. Her phone buzzed again. Mira, Elena? Her breath trembled. She typed back, not thinking, only feeling, only needing. But before she hit send, she hovered. Her message wasn't safe. Wasn't neutral. It wasn't what Mira expected. It was the beginning of a truth Elena had buried for too long. She reread it. Then, after a moment where everything in the room seemed to hold its breath, she pressed send. The message shot out into the night. It was only 2 words. Simple. Honest. Devastating. Elena. Come here. Chapter 1. Elena. Night continued. Mira arrives. Elena didn't move after sending the message. She didn't pace. She didn't rehearse what she would say. She didn't second-guess herself the way she usually did. She simply sat there, still, cold, damp, staring at the 2 words glowing on her screen. Come here. Felt like a confession. Or a warning. Or both. Minutes passed without response. Then, Mira. I'm on my way. Elena's stomach dropped. Suddenly the apartment felt too small, too bright, too aware. She turned off the desk lamp. Then the kitchen light. Only the faint glow from the city seeped in through the window. A fractured gray-blue that made the room feel suspended, unreal. Her heartbeat filled the quiet. 5 minutes. 7. 10. The hallway outside remained silent until, finally, footsteps. Light ones. Hesitant ones. Then a soft knock. Elena's breath caught. She didn't say, come in. She didn't call out. She just walked to the door and opened it. Mira stood there, hair pulled back in a loose bun, cheeks flushed from the cold. She wasn't wearing a coat, just a cardigan over her dress from the cafe. Her mascara had smudged from the rain on her way over, but it only made her look more vulnerable, more raw. Elena, she whispered. Not a question. A plea. Elena stepped aside. Come in. Mira moved past her, but stopped just a few steps inside, as if crossing the threshold had trapped her in some invisible tension. She didn't turn around at first. She just looked at the dim apartment, the soaked coat on the floor, the blinds dripping with leftover rain. Then she finally faced Elena. What happened tonight? Mira asked softly. You left without letting us explain. Without letting me explain. Elena closed the door behind her, leaning against it. You didn't owe me an explanation, she said. Yes, I did. Mira's voice cracked. I do. Silence stretched between them, tight as wire. Mira took a step closer. And another. Elena, your message. I've never seen you text me like that before. I've never felt like that before, Elena replied. Mira's breath hitched. The air thickened. Mira looked down at her own hands, wringing them. Luca and I, nothing is happening. Not like that. You have to know that. I don't know anything, Elena said. Not anymore. Mira's voice softened to a tremor. Tell me what you think is happening. Elena looked at her, really looked. At the way Mira's shoulders shook. At the fear in her eyes, not fear of Elena but fear for her. At the way she stood there, torn between stepping closer and stepping back, not sure which direction would hurt more. Elena swallowed. I think, she said slowly, that I've been lying to myself, about a lot of things. About you. About Luca. About what I feel. Mira's eyes widened. Elena took a breath sharp enough to ache. And I think you've been lying to yourself too. Mira stepped forward as if pulled. Elena. No. Elena whispered. Wait. If you come closer, I'm not going to be able to stop. Mira froze mid-step. The room pulsed with silence. Outside, the last drops of rain ran down the window like tears. Inside, Elena's hand hovered near the doorframe, fingers trembling. Mira's voice was barely sound. Why did you tell me to come here tonight? Elena exhaled shakily. Because I needed to know if you would. Mira closed her eyes, her shoulders rising with a sharp inhale. Of course I would, she said. I always would. That's the problem, Elena whispered. Mira opened her eyes, brighter, wetter. Elena, look at me. Elena did. And Mira stepped right into the very last bit of space between them. Not touching, but so close Elena could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, could see each breath Mira drew. Mira lifted her hand, hesitated, then let it hover near Elena's cheek without making contact. Elena, what are we doing? She asked, voice breaking at the edges. Elena's throat ached. I don't know, she said. But pretending we're not doing anything at all is killing me. Mira's breath trembled visibly. Elena, she whispered again, this time with something heavier inside it. Something neither of them had dared name until tonight. For a long moment they simply stood there, suspended on the thin line between truth and collapse. Then Mira lowered her hand, curled it into a fist at her side, and said the words that cracked the night open. I shouldn't be here. Elena felt her heart stop. Mira's eyes shone with guilt, and want, and fear. Especially fear. I shouldn't, Mira whispered again. But I didn't know how not to come. Elena stepped closer then, just a fraction. Enough for Mira to feel it. Enough for Mira's breath to stutter. Then stay, Elena whispered. At least for tonight. Mira's eyes fluttered shut. Another beat of silence. Another breath. Another war waged inside her chest. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but unmistakably certain. Okay,